What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. The co-founder and co-host, I guess, of the show, and data guru here of OccupyFantasy.com. Alongside here with Brian Jester at BrianJesterFF on Twitter, co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy. How's it going, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Happy Tuesday. How you doing?
Not too bad. Bittersweet. That it's the last of the show. I always love doing these shows. But hey, we got more in store for you all going forward, which I think will be very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people were interested in the idea of maybe a monthly $1 million mission until the 2022 NFL season returns. So definitely something we'll get working. And I'm excited to talk about things in those shows, because then we get to discuss all the fun sports, MMA and PGA and the nightly sports and the grind and the process. So I think a lot of people will get things out of that. So I'm looking forward to that already.
Yeah. The only thing, you talk about the nightly sports, the only thing that I'm still kicking myself in the tail for is apparently it was free money betting Draymond Green under props.
We blew that, dude.
Yeah, we blew that.
do you think those people, for those who aren't aware, don't play NBA, don't bet, Draymond Green, there was an announcement 2 days ago, 3 days ago, whatever it was, that he was going to play for like 5 seconds and then leave the game. So everyone was betting like single game parlays and unders on Draymond Green's props. He didn't accrue any points or anything, but he was on the court, got a foul, and now this whole fiasco about paying out all these bets. I mean, people were winning tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. And once in a lifetime opportunity. But Moose, do you think those people got limited or will get limited after that?
I don't know. I would assume they would have some mark on their account. Is what I would guess. The only thing I would say is maybe the book's smart enough, and if they see if they bet Draymond Green unders, early in the day when they first came out or something like that, when that wasn't known, I think maybe they get a pass. And maybe the people who just bet $5-10 on it, but if you're the people who bet like a $5,000 5-way parlay on it,
then you maxed it, because I mean they're not gonna let you. I mean the book's not gonna let you. They're not gonna let you win, first of all, in props, and they're definitely not gonna win when they think you have inside info or an edge of some sort.
Yeah, an interesting point I will say is someone made a case where you can't bet, like in some states you can't bet. Oh, did you go away on Discord?
I don't think so. Should be
here.
Can you hear me?
Video.
Oh, it's literally done that twice in a row. I don't know. Like before we were. That's weird. Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, there you go. But what I was saying is some regulations say you can't bet on a known event, and some people are making the case. What if Sharm's tweet that he's only going to play for one play make it a known event?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Books will rule whenever.
The case
was
in
favor for
I was going to say. Some people were saying that a reporter's report can always be wrong, so it's not necessarily a known event. So you never know. It's weird. Right. But congrats to the people who took advantage of that. They sure as hell did a lot better than we did on DFS.
For sure.
Week 18. Yeah, and so that's a great thing to jump into. We'll go ahead and show how you did last week in only the DraftKings Big GPP. FanDuel GPPs does not include Showdown, Small Field Contests, other sports. Over on FanDuel, $750 in entries, $322 in winnings, for a minus 57% ROI. Over on DraftKings, $37.50 in entries, $14.17 in winnings, for a minus 62% ROI.
Moose, when am I going to learn not to play the final week of the regular season? Will I ever learn?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, though. You said last year, don't play the first 4 weeks, and that was literally your only spike week.
I know. So. I actually felt pretty good going into this week. Paring down the player pool was pretty hard, but I did feel pretty good, and having the research behind it. So it is what it is. It was a long, rough season. What will the final numbers look like?
Final numbers, year to date. Should probably crop this image to make it fit on screen. 132,500 entries, so you literally could have bought a house. $79,000 in winnings for a minus 40% ROI, which is not what a house would be.
Nope, can't buy a house with negative 40% ROI. That's for sure. But you and I were talking before the show, so we've done the $1 Million Mission series. This is the third season we've done it. What was it? Plus 100% ROI the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So plus 100% ROI. And maybe that gave me some overconfidence, because you look at the NFL season, you look at the specific dynamics of this series, just the NFL main slates. We only get 17, now 18. opportunities per year. A lot of variance in that. Maybe the 100% ROIs. Maybe they gave me a little bit of overconfidence. Maybe I just got unlucky this year. But we did notice that entrants are stacking a little bit more than they have been in previous years. So it's always a battle, and I'm not trying to take too much from it, but also not trying to let it just pass as variance. Maybe there's something more to it.
Yeah, the first thing that thought to me is I don't have the actual like hard numbers in front of me, but each year these contests get bigger and bigger. More and more people come to DFS. Eventually, it's going to be the point where it's like when you're playing the pooch punt over on FanDuel, where they have like literally 1 million people in it, and so it's getting harder and harder each year just to stack up with the randomness that can happen when 300,000 people. I don't know, how many people are in the DraftKings GPP? 100,000.
Yeah, close to 200,000.
Yeah, and so the more people you add, the more randomness that you need to take into account. So, Brian, do you think we'll ever get to a point where DraftKings or FanDuel, I guess, Yahoo, wherever, where DFS, these big GPPs, $1 million at first, get so big that eventually the edge just isn't there?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I really don't know how many more people there are out there that these sites haven't captured. So I really don't know if they can grow that much, and maybe they can. Maybe, we always talk about the legalization of sports betting and sites taking DFS players and moving them over to sports betting. But maybe the opposite is true, right? Like maybe all these sites open to sports betting now. All these people who never really considered before, now maybe they convert to DFS. So I guess it's always possible. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe there is a point where it just gets to becoming a lottery, like the pooch punt is. And that's just another example, right? Again, these numbers are only for the largest GPPs. So it's pretty impressive to think of 100% plus ROI 2 straight years in contests that have hundreds of thousands of people. And I had two spike weeks basically per year, five total in 3 years it is pretty impressive. But I'm always striving to have to be the best, and it's a little disappointing and humbling to have a losing season in the big GPPs.
Definitely. Now, last thing I will say before we move on to the next topic on this is when you talk about the legalization of sports betting, particularly DraftKings, they do have DraftKings pools on their sports betting side. I know Maryland is scheduled to get it in Q1 of this year. Brian, do you think there's any way we would be able to incorporate? I don't know what your bankroll allocation and contest section is going to be, but do you think you'll be dabbling in some of those sports betting pools for NFL, anything like that? And if so, do you think we would be able to incorporate that into some sort of $1 million mission type style video?
I'm sure we could. I mean, I can't wait to get limited by the sports books, that's for sure. So I'll definitely be diving in. But kind of similar how when I first started DFS, I mean, because you remember I used to bet on sports full time before this, and the game's changed a lot since then. So I would definitely need a reacclimation period before anything happens. I would need to just re-examine all the bet types again, see what the edges are out there. There's so many different parlays now that weren't available before. So yeah, I'll be into it. I don't know how quickly I'll get into it, but I honestly can't wait for Maryland to get that going.
Definitely. Absolutely, yeah. So, really quick, we did post on this YouTube channel the 3,000 subscriber giveaway. Brian, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, but we do have an awesome giveaway package.
So just click. So just click on our channel. You'll see the latest video, the latest upload, the 3K subscriber giveaway. Just a thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel, watched our videos. We put a greater effort in over the last year to put out more content here on YouTube. You guys responded, you watched them, you subscribed. So we appreciate that, and we're just giving back to our community, doing a random giveaway. Winner gets a huge prize package. So go check it out. Just click our channel, watch that video, follow the instructions, and you'll be entered. And we'll do a drawing next Monday for the winner. And thanks again.
Definitely. I mean, I've been having a blast too doing it. I also learn as well. I think even if as being the host or co-host of shows, you still learn from the people that you talk to, and it's just fantastic. So. Absolutely. As Johnny points out in the chat here, great season. Thanks for all the great info and transparency this year. I don't know how many other people, Brian, would be comfortable going on camera saying they had minus 40% for, minus $50,000?
Yeah, no one. I mean, you don't really see it in the industry, right? You see the positives for sure. You always see the interviews post the wins. You don't see them post losses. So I know I'm happy to do this. I think it brings a realistic element to the DFS game.
I love Joe's comment here. He says, "You should announce the winner now, since all the important people are here anyway."
For real, I saw your comment. You are entered into the contest. We'll bump your name to the top, Joe.
There we go. So Brian, I don't know how you want to take this. I know if you want to do like a season-long recap of things we learned, if you want to take a look at Fantasy Labs for Week 18, what do you think you want to do?
Yeah, let's look at the winners real quick of Week 18. Some of the bigger contests, the Millie, and just see what some of the people did, and then we can kind of recap. And if you guys have questions, comments about the season, what we're looking forward to, we can certainly talk about that.
So the thing that stood out to me first was that light is way too bright. Hold on, trying to be fancy with making the light around my face. It just shattered, just destroyed everything in my eye. The first thing that stuck out to me was 150 Maxer won it. So
yep.
Congrats to him. And the lineup wasn't of just randomly bad plays, like just random.
It was a 3x1, right?
Let me check the leaderboard really quick.
And he had the sickest 0.2% play of all time.
Juwan Jennings. Dude, I was so mad because I had a San Francisco stack over on FanDuel that was pretty high up that had Kittle and Debo. And I'm just like, and every time he caught it, I was like, dude, stop it. Stop Juwan Jennings. Just stop fucking catching touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, what a play. What a play. 0.2% owned, 3x1 stack. Got in 2 high volume running backs. Tyler Lockett. What was his exposure to Juwan Jennings? That's interesting. Like, was this somebody he had in like 1 or 2 lineups?
Let's take a look here. Let's hope this doesn't crash. But really quick, I do love the 3-1 stack. Stafford, Higbee, Cup. I'm running back with Juwan Jennings. That is definitely a Curtis Samuel theory piece there.
For sure. 100%.
Let's see. So we go wide receivers. Can you sort by player name on here?
There he is. He had 1.3%.
1.3%. Nuts.
So was that 2 lineups?
Yeah.
One was in the Millie. Sick. Very sick.
Awesome. That's awesome. If we take a look at some of his highest exposed players, he had 130 players in his player pool, which seems like a little bit on the high side. But again, I don't know how, with it being a few more games than normal, I don't know how that played into that. I know I had a little bit higher player pool than normal. I don't know if that's good or bad, but hey, he won the Millie, so we can't say anything.
Shout out to him, Jay Blake, the king, literally the king.
Yeah, definitely. So didn't have too much high exposure on one particular player. It was like he had a big core. That's just wide receivers, but on running back, yeah. So he did have 50% James Conner, David Montgomery, so that was pretty big there. And then
what was his quarterback's allocation?
Yeah, had every quarterback.
Everyone's copying Laz Gets Fit now, just playing every quarterback.
Yeah.
Cousins, Kyler, Stafford. I mean, I'm more, again, not hating, more inclined to believe that if you have this many quarterbacks, that many players in your player pool, and you don't really have a ton of exposure to any one player. Obviously, 50% to Connor is nice, but I think it's a little more of a variance luck out than any like one dedicated strategy. Again, maybe I'm wrong. And again, I'm not hating. We're just commenting on what we see here and what usually works. So, I don't know. It's interesting, and shout out to him for being $1 million richer.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, the only thing or I guess another thing that stood out to me was that I knew it was a good week is if you look here on the left side of your screen, you see a 150 Maxer got first, person with 117 entries, 150, 150, 128, 150, 150. It was a good week for the 150 Maxers.
Yeah, for sure. What about the some of the bigger contests, like I think they had the 4-4-4-4 2-point conversion, the Wildcat. I'm curious to see what won those.
Whistle. Oh,
yeah, no shit.
Let me reload it here.
Okay.
Yeah. So Whistles won it. Has 7 lineups.
7. Do a little math here. 7 times 4-4-4-4, 31K. So a little 185K profit. Well, I guess 7 was the max here, right?
That's what it looks like. Yeah. What I find funny here is you have Whistles who had 7 entries, got first, won 186,000 ROI according to the table here. Person in second only had 1 entry and had 145,000 ROI. 145,000 ROI. So it's interesting just to look from a high level. Yeah, you put in all 7 entries, and even though you got first at more of a top, you won more money. You didn't really win that much money. I just found it weird.
Yeah. So interesting thing about this Rob Kaufman guy. He's won 2 millis,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no idea who this dude is, but he started following me on Twitter like pretty soon after I won the milli. I guess it was like a Millie follows Millie type type community. I don't know. Anyways, so I was like, oh, who's this random dude that won a Millie? This was 2019, right? It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
random ass dude, just a regular looking guy. Then he tweeted, I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. He was like, please break the playoff slates up into 2-gamers or something like that, because it like just randomly came across my timeline.
Yeah.
And they did do that, and he won the Millie last year too. So that was his second Millie, Rob Kaufman, and got second here. Clearly a great player, and again, I don't think it's someone that really anyone knows. You don't see him on the leaderboards much at all, but clearly Rob Kaufman, whoever you are out there, if you're watching, what's up, man? Crushes NFL for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Does very well here. I do want to see really quick, since we have the other 2 contests available here. Let's look about the Wildcat. So Whistles did 125 max and got 4th on there.
Okay.
Mike and Moncton, I guess, got first.
Okay. And it's cut off on the screen. Who got second and third?
Oh yeah, I crop it and then it crashes. But biggest Doogie got second, and Rigby got third.
Okay, and so let's look at Whistles, because 125 lineups at $300 a pop is pretty expensive. So I'm curious to see what his approach was here.
Yeah, so his most exposed player was Cleveland defense in this contest.
So pretty chalky. They were literally 35% in the field. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Zach Ertz, Deontay Harris, James Conner, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, Sonny Michel. Some players said he had over 25%.
Interesting. I think Osimo was similarly on those guys, so I think they must, not saying like, so maybe he uses Osimo's projections, which is a public site, in his process, because I think he has a lot of overlap with what Osimo does.
Nice. Yeah, both successful players, so can't hate whatsoever. Dot Bet said Brian hinted at the field stacking a little bit more this year, and the NFL teams running a bit more than normal. Any other observations on a macro level? Felt like a strange DFS year. Brian, I'll just point out that the feeling I've had, it just seems like the bad teams are way more bad this year than they were last year.
And the good teams are worse too, right? There's more parity. Like I obviously Green Bay has the #1 seed. Tennessee's probably the worst 1 seed we've seen in a while on the AFC side. And I think that makes for a lot of potential chaos in the playoffs, first of all. Like moving forward, as we look at the next 3-4 weeks of DFS, like a lot of crazy shit can happen given what teams are in and what teams have done this year. But yeah, I think, Dot-Bet's hit on the 2 key things that we've looked at so far that we need to consider, and just kind of get a whole offseason to recap of. Scoring was down and field stacking a little more. So what does that mean for us, right? The margins for error are much thinner if scoring's lower and players are stacking more. I think it's something we have to keep an eye on is, are there any mandates by the NFL to not call holding as much? Get it back to those 2019 scoring levels. And if that happens, then I think we can be more confident. If we get word that, we normally see this before the season. If we get word that, hey, we're going to continue doing the same things the same way, scoring is where we want it, then we might have to think about some different ways, because we were looking at week 18 or week 17 last year, and teams that weren't in contention that were playing each other, there were some shootouts. But if you look back at those totals, they were like 54 points. You look at all the totals this past week, they were like 43, like a 10-point difference. So it plays a big part, and I think, and again, it's something that needs a deeper dive that is tougher to do when you're in the middle of the season. But as we have basically 6 months now of an off season, something we can certainly dive into.
Yeah, we learned that cover 2 is apparently the greatest defense ever.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Joe, it looks like your message got retracted. I don't know if that was you or a random Nightbot. Nightbot somehow creeped back over from Twitch and just said he got mad at everyone.
I saw it before it got deleted. It says something about changing the strategy for playoffs. It will have to, just because the slates are smaller. I'm actually a little excited because, we actually the stacking edge that we get that's a little diminished in the regular season on larger slates is much more pronounced on smaller slates where teams entries don't stack as much. So I'm kind of excited to get back in the 2 and 3 gamers. We did all the research. Jack and I will be doing the 2-game videos, and hopefully those videos help people. And I'm looking forward to playing some of the big contests in the playoffs.
Nice. Yeah, that should be interesting. Ed said, or Zapes first says, do we think the fans in the stands changed the game that much?
I think it's part of it, right? It's hard not to be part of it. I think there's so many things that are a part of it. You have the holding calls. You have all the COVID related absences.
Hmm.
Teams resting players more during the week. Fans, like it's a whole aggregate of possibilities that led it to the more cover two. Like we saw all this, right? So I think it's just a conglomerate of all these things, and it's yeah, like it's hard to pinpoint one single thing that probably caused it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's one single thing. I know we talked about the referees, and just looking here, I mean, just looking at NFLpenalties.com, there was across the league like one extra penalty a game for like 10 yards almost. So that adds up. Obviously, that varies between referee crews. So I don't know if that's something, but I don't know if that's getting too deep into it. But looking at not necessarily incorporating it into an OF index, but looking at it from a high level, this referee crew calls these type of penalties more often. Maybe we use that as a tiebreaker.
For sure. Yeah, and again, I think it's something to definitely look into as they clearly have an impact on the game.
Yeah. Ed says, any thoughts on playoff challenge this year? Thinking KC, Cincinnati, Green Bay lineups, minus Hill since he's hurt.
Yeah, I think the big thing is monitoring injury reports up until Friday because there's a lot of injuries, especially on the Chiefs side, right? The running backs, Tyreek Hill, the Arizona running backs, lots of potential injuries. And I don't have any concrete takes yet, but gathering data, me and Jack are doing 60 lineups in the FFPC playoff challenge once again. So if you're in Discord, we'll dump some info in before Friday.
Absolutely, yeah. So I just threw up the $1 Million Mission logo back up on the screen while we're just chit chatting. I can always throw it back over to the contest dashboard if we need to. Yeah, so I found it was a pretty good recap, Ryan, of the season so far. Just one other question for you: is there anything different you would do now that you had the whole season to look back on? Is there anything that you wanted that you look back at your process and say, I wish I started doing that earlier or something like that?
I think I really hit the stride on small field stuff right the last couple of weeks, and that was in Showdown too. I bounced back and forth all year, early on, especially in the Showdown from 150 max into small field, and I think I really nailed the approach. And so yeah, I wish I spent more there. And again, in 2022, I'm focusing more on that as well to kind of smooth the variance in between 150 wins and I guess this is now is as good a time of any to announce this. Starting a new podcast.
Oh,
It'll be released. The first episode will be released probably the week before the Super Bowl. And it's
okay.
called the Emotional Bankroll Podcast. Basically, what I'm doing is interviewing other DFS pros to get an insight into the lifestyle and the mental health and process aspect of being a pro, right? Not trying to pick their brains about picks or lineups or strategies or whatever. It's literally talking to them about being a pro. And the first three guests, I haven't announced this yet. This is the first time I'm announcing this. I'm going to put it on Twitter probably in a week or two. But first guest is Colin Drew, who I did the podcast with, and he just transitioned out of the DFS industry. So getting someone's take on why he would leave the industry. Brick75, who's a top 10 Roto Grinders player. He's the second episode, and just interviewed Awesemo today, the #1 player, and he'll be the third episode. So all these podcasts will be out probably in February, and got a whole list of guests that I'm lining up to fill time in during the NFL offseason. So I think you guys will really love these episodes. The reason I bring that up now is because in the Brick episode, episode 2, I talked to him about process and all this stuff. And basically we got to the point of talking, I don't know how we even got to this point, about how playing small field contests, we always say check the entrance list and playing against pros is something to avoid. But we came to the conclusion that maybe playing small field contests of like 15 to 100 players against a bunch of pros is actually a really good thing, because as Brick was telling me, like there's no way that Awesemo, Mock Love, and Whistles are really optimizing every single contest, right? When they're playing so much volume, that you have an edge. And we've talked about this before, right? It's like playing contest-specific strategy. If
Yeah.
you play that specific strategy against pros who are just blindly entering lineups, you actually have a pretty decent edge. I know the ETR guys, Michael Leone, has great success doing that in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
So really, the essence of that strategy, I think, is something I'm gonna look forward to doing more in 2022.
Yeah, that's a great podcast. It's very great. I cannot wait to hear it. It should be absolutely fantastic. But you talk about specific contests each week. It's just like how you do in the League of Legends contest. There's like the literally only contest you can play. You do very well in that. MMA you do well with specific contests in that as well. Yeah, I think if you just focus on a certain thing, whether that's head-to-heads, cash, 300-player leagues, certain specific contest types, a spy. If you keep doing that and you just keep researching what people do, I think you definitely get an edge there.
And the smaller, the better, right?
Yeah.
Like the League of Legends contest you mentioned, it's pretty much always 100 players. There's always the same entrants in it, and I know exactly what guys and girls are going to do in that contest. So yeah, it actually makes it a big edge when you're hyper focused on one thing when all these other people are entering multiple lineups in different contests. So we always say try to avoid the pros when you can, but there are some scenarios where it actually does benefit you.
Definitely, yes. So got a bunch of questions in here. Jordan says, any shot the Steelers pull an upset this weekend? No.
I get yeah, 2 touchdown underdogs in Arrowhead. I doubt it. I guess anything's possible, but I would not be betting on that.
That's the Bengals fan in me saying no. Hopes Kansas City wins by 40. Johnny says, question about using a builder to create 150 sets. How much randomness do you use? I've watched Osimo's tutorial videos, and he always seems to crank up the randomness. Do you use it to build much?
Yeah, I always leave it on high for all the contests. And the reason ours works a little differently than most other optimizers and lineup builders. But the reason I do it is because I want to get different distributions of players that aren't correlated or related mixed together properly. So I always use this example, but there are some builders out there that somehow can't get this right, that you'll have a tight end and a running back who aren't in the same game, not related at all, and you have 5% of that tight end, but like 80% of your lineups with that tight end have this other random running back. It's like, I really want to crank up the randomness so that tight end gets mixed with like 5 different running backs to give me the optimal combination or a chance at the optimal combination. So, yeah, long story short, I always use high.
Nice. Let's see here. Joseph, so a total of all your plays for the year across all sports, were you profitable this past year?
Yeah, thankfully for NFL preseason and UFC and League of Legends and NFL Showdown Small Field. I wasn't profitable in large field showdown, but small field I absolutely crushed it. So,
nice.
Yeah, it ended up being a pretty solid year for the most part. Just that every week we tune in here and we see losses, so it's just a small portion of the larger portfolio.
Nice, yeah. And one other thing to talk about, we haven't actually. I don't think we've actually like I'm sure you wrote the article about it or whatnot. But your Yahoo Bankroll challenge, just to put that on the record. Started with $0 January 1st, 2021, and what did you end up with?
Just over 2,500 by the final slate of the season. So, yeah, I honestly got kind of lucky, right? I pressed it a little bit at the end. I at one point I got to a peak of $800, dropped most of that, mostly because I haven't really refined a 150 process on Yahoo. We don't have a Yahoo lineup builder at Occupy, so I have to use other sites, and it's just not. There's a reason we built our own. So
yeah.
Lost in 150 there, got it back down to like $100, ran that up into like $300 something before the last week of the regular season, and then entered a bunch of lineups in the $12 on the Christmas slate and got like 4 in the top 10 and got back 2,700. So nice. It was it was an interesting experience for sure, but I think a lot of people can take away from the fact that if you grind those smaller sites, you can certainly grow a bankroll.
And now I see you probably drop 100,000 into Yahoo, and actually say, forget the bankroll challenge. Because I can only imagine. We talked about you talked about the Emotional Bankroll podcast, where, I can only imagine, how much do you think that was actually a drain or like a negative on your process, or was it a positive where, you're putting $5,000-$10,000 on slates, and now you got to sit and worry about your freaking like $3 Yahoo contest and actually worry about it.
It wasn't optimal from any standpoint. It was purely optimal from a content producing standpoint because I wasn't putting enough time into the Yahoo that I should be, and any time that's not dedicated to my primary income on DraftKings and FanDuel is also a waste of time in that regard, right? So yeah, optimally it wasn't great, and maybe that had an effect in some ways, but no, I think and honestly, maybe it's not even maybe, definitely it's a negative missing out on all that overlay with my actual bankroll. So for sure.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you'll keep playing Yahoo in the 2022 season?
I don't know about the nightly sports, but I think for NFL I almost have to. If they're going to do that overlay again next year, it was literally 200K overlay every week. Yeah. So if they continue to do that, I have to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'll bug Jack to get Yahoo in our builder before then.
I know, right? Yeah, Justin says it's really cool regarding the podcast because I don't know how people do it full time. It's tough, man.
You guys will love some of the conversations so far about just the lifestyle and how much money. Because I mean, you see on screen here, right? For me, 130K in entries, right? That's literally a weekend for some of the top 10. Like there's so I obviously play a lot more than the average player, and the top 10 or 20 play a lot more than I do. And it's just like it's unfathomable how much action they're dealing with, and to
Yeah.
talk to them about those kind of volume levels is pretty interesting.
It almost reminds me in the standpoint of when you see these interviews with some of the professional sports bettors when they say they get a call or a steam play that they got to hit, and they're just they're saying get down as literally as much action as you possibly can, and they get down hundreds of thousands, $500,000 on multiple games throughout the day, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, man, it's nuts. It's nuts. Yeah, they're not thinking about it like I can buy a small city with these entries. It's just more like this is a part of my bankroll, and I gotta bet it.
I can rent Luxembourg for the night.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
Ed says, any good idea for extra content this year from the 300 sub contest or 3,000 sub contest?
Yeah, I haven't looked through all the comments yet. I briefly looked through some, but yeah, a lot of people are clamoring for NBA streams, which we'll get going here shortly. And then a lot of people want more high-level lineup builder stuff, so I think that's something we could definitely implement.
Definitely. Let's see. Dapes says, we'll definitely tune into the podcast. The mental/process side gets thrown to the side in this industry. Can't wait to hear their advice.
That's some good stuff, man. I'm learning every single episode I'm doing, and I think I'm asking thoughtful questions that most of these guys don't answer in their typical interview. So I really think it'll be enjoyable for people to listen.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it, from a standpoint of they did these lineups well. Some of these have families. Like, how do you balance your family, and how do you tell your wife, go take the kids to school because I'm spending literally $1 million, right, or something like that. So it's interesting content. I cannot wait to hear it. It's gonna be great. I know you all will do well in that.
Yeah,
cool. Last couple questions from Pete. What's up, Pete? He says LOL season. Yes,
let's go.
Grinding out. I will be. I took a nap earlier today, so I can stay up for lock. Make sure I don't miss lineups. David said, in leagues this week, do we like 3-1 stacks for Saturday to Monday slate?
Very niche question here. So very rarely do we get 6-game slates. It's kind of like an afternoon only or early only type setup. And yeah, 3-1 stacks are generally pretty good. Maybe slightly larger if you really like one game. But yeah, I think 3-1 at minimum for a six-game slate.
Yeah. And Justin says, Yahoo to me seems more like gambling with the pricing always so soft.
I guess it depends on your definition of gambling, because if you have accurate projections and you know where the ownership is going to be, it's easy to differentiate. So, I mean, I would argue that tougher pricing is more like gambling because sharper players have a bigger edge over you. But I don't know. I guess it just depends on what you prefer. Some people prefer playing DraftKings because it's harder. Some people prefer FanDuel because it's easier. Same with Yahoo.
Yep. John says, will LOL ever be offered on the builder?
We considered it. It is on the back burner. The fact that quarantine is officially over and the contest sizes aren't big anymore, there isn't as much of a demand for it. So, Jack's got some other stuff he's working on. It is it's on the list. I don't know if we'll ever get to it unless we get another pandemic. Not that we're out of this pandemic yet, but not unless we'll get a society shutdown pandemic where esports is the only thing on the menu.
Yeah, which is crazy because Pete's in here. I think actually Pete was the one that tweeted at FanDuel where. And I've been taking a look at the contest. They'll fill like hours before the slate even starts, and then they just don't make the contest bigger.
People want to play it. It's perfect, dude. It's a perfect sport overnight in between different sports locking where people have the bankroll for it. So, I don't know, man. Sites need to step it up. I think it'll definitely fill.
Absolutely nothing better than in my like Monday morning meetings, and I'm supposed to be on camera, but on my other monitor I'm watching the final League of Legends game, and not even paying attention at all what's going on in the meeting.
Dude, I'm with you, dude. I'm so looking forward to waking up tomorrow, grabbing my breakfast, my cereal, my oatmeal, whatever it is, and sitting down at the computer and watching the final League of Legends matches. So I've always, ever since quarantine started, I've loved doing that. So I'm excited to get that back in that routine.
Because we talked about it before, where we like UFC from a DFS standpoint in the sense that everything's like back to back to back to back, like one after another. Kind of almost the same way with League of Legends. You have a game after a game after a game. And so you're not trying to figure out how do I watch all 8 to 10 NFL games at once and track what's going on. It's just you watch this game. I need this to happen. That's the only thing you have to watch.
Right, exactly, exactly. It's funny you say that because when I asked Brick and Osimo what their favorite sports to sweat were, both said MMA. I don't think you would normally think
Mm.
that. And I mean, we said it on here before. It's one of the best sports to sweat. So if you don't play MMA, I mean, again, there's whatever you feel about the UFC, whatever you feel about people punching each other for a living. That's one thing I understand. But if you just care about the gambling, the profits, the sweat, I mean, it's hard to get better than UFC.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Last question before we start to wind down here. Obviously, if you have more questions, then you all can put them in. But Joseph, I know I've asked this for, but is NASCAR ever a consideration?
I mean, maybe, right? I mean, obviously, there's the $1 million GPP in February, which I have some tickets for, and I'll pick some random numbers because it is really a random number generator for freaking NASCAR events.
Yeah.
To be honest, some of the content, the news sports that we've put out have been a result of people reaching out to us, and surprisingly, no one's really reached out to us. That's been good, I'll say. No one's reached out to us that's been good. That says, hey, I would like to write a NASCAR article for you. If we got that, sure, we would offer it. We haven't gotten it yet. So if you know someone that's really good at NASCAR, tell them to hit us up.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know enough about NASCAR. I don't think you know enough about NASCAR to to be knowledgeable and break it down from a DFS perspective. So until that can
I
happen, either it's tough.
I do know that if MMA is on one end of the spectrum for watchability and sweat enjoyment, NASCAR is the furthest opposite end of possible for DFS enjoyment because
Yeah,
literally 99% of the race doesn't matter for 99% of the drivers, which seems to me like the worst possible DFS outcome.
yeah. I tried to watch it the one time, and I was just like, this is terrible. This,
It's the worst sweat of literally of all time. I,
yeah,
I, I played like the iRacing during
yeah.
quarantine too.
At least the
And I
iRacing was somewhat interesting. You get to listen to the drivers and stuff.
That's true. I mean, either the iRacing, I got second one time for 10K. No idea how it happened. And it was just like it just kept refreshing random numbers, random numbers, random numbers. The race was over, and I just popped up to second. It's like this is actually just playing a slot machine. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So, Brian, this was the last $1 million mission of the 2021 NFL season. Is there any last lingering thoughts, comments, concerns you want to talk about?
No, appreciate everyone tuning in every single week. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people in the 3K subscriber giveaway video, which if you haven't done yet, go check out and enter the contest. A lot of people said their favorite part of 2021 on YouTube was this series. So shout out to us, Moose. We did a great job, I think, doing this.
Nice.
So had a great time doing it with you. And yeah, looking forward to what's next. Moose and I will be in Vegas for the Super Bowl. We'll get together for a Super Bowl podcast before then. As far as the post NFL $1 million mission, I imagine it'll wait till after Vegas before we start recapping and figuring out a strategy for what those shows look like.
Definitely. And Brian, I know we've been talking about this for literally 5 years in a row, but do you think we finally might be able to interview somebody in Vegas about props?
we go out with that intention every single year, and somehow it never happens. We gotta make it happen, most.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, just for on the up and up, what's coming up. Brian talked about the Emotional Bankroll podcast that's dropping right before Super Bowl. Waleed and I are having a college basketball. We're hashing out the details on that podcast as we speak. Again, so if you have any more questions of what you would want to see on that, more geared towards March Madness and the betting and the March Madness pools, conference tournaments. Going to have some betting aspects in that as well. That should be fun. And we're still going to have our Saturday NFL content. We have the Discord. We have the whole 9 yards. League of Legends is back. The League of Legends plug is on OccupyFantasy.com. I don't think I missed anything, did I? Oh, I guess the props contest. Or not the props contest. The props podcast for Super Bowl. That should be fun, too. Always love getting together with Mike Carey.
Absolutely. Props. And I'm planning on getting a bunch of guests for... My goal right now is to have a different guest each day of the week leading up to the Super Bowl for FanDuel, Yahoo, DraftKings strategy. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. That should be very interesting. Yeah, so with that, kind of take us out of here, Brian.
Let's do it.
Let's see if I can get the flash working. All right, so I got the lights shattering out now. So
hey,
there we go. So I'm Moose. You're Brian. We're here from OccupyFantasy.com to end the 2021 $1 million mission. It's been awesome. Glad that everyone that's been here, you all have asked very thoughtful and great questions. If you have any more questions like that, definitely go ahead and ask them in the Discord. No question is a dumb question. There still are some weeks left in the NFL season until Cincinnati Bengals are crowned Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, good luck, Wilson.
Definitely. But until then, Wilson Bryan from Occupy Fantasy. Have a good night.